everybody. Thanks for being with us today. I'm Ashley Jones, Managing Director of Community Programs here at the Venture Center. And today we come to you live with this next VC workshop on how to future-proof your business. We've got 4 folks from the Simmons Wealth Management team who are going to go in depth and talk more about this topic. But before we get to them, I do want to share some more information. First, I want to thank our sponsors. These sponsors, advocate for all of our community programs throughout the year: Frost PLLC, Simmons Bank, Wright Lindsay Jennings, Little Rock Regional Chamber, and Main Street Technology. So thank you to all of our sponsors for continued support of all of our community programs throughout the year. And some of the programs that we have coming up that I wanted to mention this week, on Friday, we have a VC Health workshop. So this is a continuation of this program that we kicked off in January that focuses on entrepreneurship and mental health. This one specifically will be on those 2 topics in children: how to balance, your work as an entrepreneur and family life, if there is such a thing as balance with those 2 things. But we have some mental health professionals and folks that are going to talk through this topic. That's again this Friday from noon to 1. Also on May 14th, we have a Lift the Rock program that features an economic development resource as well as a local entrepreneur that shares their success story. So we'll have the conductor, which if you're familiar or entrepreneur, you may be familiar with them. They're an entrepreneur support organization located in Conway. And they're also going to feature the entrepreneur and the business Golf IQ. So again, that's May 14th. And also May 25th, we have a lunch and learn on mentorship, the importance of it, why you need a mentor, how to go about finding one, what a mentor relationship looks like. All of those questions will be answered on May 25th from noon to 1. And all of these programs can be registered for via our website, venturecenter.co, as well as our newsletter. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, you can do that through our website, and also on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all the different resources there. So we'd love to have you all attend some of those programs in the future. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and pass it over to the Simmons Wealth Management team. You'll be hearing from Ben Ridings, Lee Rush, Carrie Smith, and Karen Cash today on advice on how to best manage business succession planning and answer your questions. Also, one final reminder for those that do have questions, you can use the chat feature, you can raise your hand, or use the Q&A function at the bottom as well. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ben.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ashley. My name is Ben Ridings. I'm Senior Vice President with Simmons Wealth Management, a division of Simmons Bank. And we're very grateful to the Venture Center for the opportunity to present today. Thank you for hosting us. We hope to share some information that will be useful to you guys. And we're going to try and cover a lot of ground pretty quickly. So we won't go too deep into any one topic, but we'll definitely make ourselves available for any follow-up after the session. So let's go ahead and jump in. Today's topic, or the theme, is how to future-proof your business. And this is a timely topic. We come across this quite frequently when we're having discussions with our clients. Typically, we are really focused on estate planning, identifying risks for our clients, and working on ways to mitigate those risks. And this is especially true when we deal with clients that actually have ownership in a business. So when you couple estate planning with business ownership, it gets really complex. And so you have to really have a thought out plan on how to address that. And what we see when we're dealing with clients that do have business ownerships is they're usually laser focused on running that business, trying to make that business successful, trying to grow the business, that oftentimes they ignore some of the key things that are important that come along with business ownership. And one of those things is a big lingering question that needs to be answered. And that's what's going to happen to my business in the future. And not having an immediate answer to that question is a big risk. Whether it's retirement or leaving the business to pursue something different, or even an unexpected event like incapacity or death, one way to answer that lingering question is to have a well thought out business succession plan. So what is a business succession plan? Well, it's a plan to transition your business to new or additional ownership at some point in the future, AKA the exit strategy. There's a lot of uncertainty with business ownership, but there's one thing that is certain: no one's going to work forever. So having an idea of how long you want to work gives a good time frame to work towards, and that's a good starting spot for developing a good succession plan. Here's a few things to contemplate when thinking about a succession plan. If you or a co-owner die, what happens to your business? If your co-owner wants out, what happens to your business? How do you plan to exit your business? And how do you plan to protect your assets for the next generation? So, how are the ways that ownership can be transferred? Catch up the slides here. Advance the slide one. There we go. Business ownership. So, ownership can be transferred in 5 ways. Typically, ownership can be transferred to another co-owner or partner within the business, can be transferred to an heir or heirs, and Lee and Carrie are going to cover that shortly. It can be transferred to a key employee, and it can also be transferred to an outside party, and that's going to be the entrepreneurial's dream that some big, large company comes in and offers them a huge amount of money to purchase their company. And then it also can be, the ownership can be transferred back to the company. One way to help achieve the transfer of ownership is to use a buy-sell agreement. Most of the time you'll see these in transferring ownership between the co-owners or to a key employee or back to the company. So what is a buy-sell agreement? A buy-sell agreement is a legal agreement that clearly defines the terms by which ownership will be transferred from one party to another, and typically depends on a triggering event like retirement, incapacity, or death. So here's a disclaimer. It's recommended that you seek legal counsel to draft these buy-sell agreements. There's lots of very knowledgeable attorneys that specialize in writing these. And so seeking professional guidance on drafting these is highly recommended. Next, I'll touch on a few examples of buy-sell agreements. So the first is a cross-purchase, and a cross-purchase is where partners or owners buy the interest of an exiting partner. And this is common when you have just a few number of partners and they're all roughly the same age. The partners will each buy life insurance policies on the other partners, and that covers them in case of unexpected death, and that enables them to fund the purchase from the partner that may have unexpectedly passed. There's also going to be language in the cross-purchase agreement that's going to address retirement, and it's going to provide the remaining partners the option to buy that interest from the retiring partner. Cross-purchase agreements aren't perfect because a lot of ownership interests deal with folks that may not be roughly the same age. And so when you're trying to purchase life insurance policies on individuals that vary in quite a bit of age, the cost of the insurance is also going to vary. Also, if you have a big group of partners, the insurance can get really complicated on how many policies you have to buy to cover all the individuals. The next buy-sell agreement type is a redemption, and it's an agreement where the business entity is committed to buying the interest back from the owner, and the owner is committed to selling its interest back to the company. And this is usually done through a stock purchase. Typically, this is seen in closely held companies, and you have multiple owners, and is driven by a triggering event. And then there's also a hybrid between the redemption and the cross-purchase agreements. So what's the common ingredient for the buy-sell? The common ingredient is going to be the business valuation. So business valuations can be done by an accounting firm, a business broker, investment banking firm, or even the current ownership. Once there's an agreed upon value, the insurance can be purchased and the entity purchase agreement can be signed. For the redemption agreement, there needs to be an agreed upon purchase price for when the triggering event occurs. Of course, these values should be updated periodically as the value of the business fluctuates. One other thing to since we covered insurance in funding and acquisition, especially for a key employee, is a small business administration can be used to fund an acquisition for a key employee. SBA can step in and fund the acquisition, and depending on the deal, the SBA can sometimes guarantee up to 90% of the loan to value, which makes the hurdle to purchase a lot lower for that key employee. There's several different methods to value a business, and I'll just highlight a couple really quickly. So SDE, or seller's discretionary earnings, that's typically used for smaller businesses less than $1 million in value. And then you also have the EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. And a function of that amount is used to determine value for businesses typically that are greater than $1 million in size. So now I will pass it to Lee to cover estate planning basics.
Thank you, Ben. My name is Lee Rush, and I am the Simmons Wealth Management Trust Business Development Manager, and I appreciate the opportunity, as Ben said, to speak with you today. We wanted to make sure that we cover just the estate planning basics for you. Many of you have a very good estate plan already in place. As you can imagine, in our wealth management and trust department, we visit with a lot of clients from time to time about their estate plan and the importance of that. And I think business owners like yourself have an even greater need to have a plan in place. Ben had talked about ownership of business and how to transition some of that ownership, but I would like to just visit a few minutes about estate planning basics. Carrie Smith, one of our trust officers here, is going to follow me with some additional information about that. Wanted to start off with just really the very basic of estate planning documents, which is a last will and testament. Many of you know about the probate estate from your own family situations, or friends and relatives have gone through that process. There's several purposes, main purposes to have a last will and testament in place, and especially for business owners. What we do in the probate process is to really register that last will and testament with the court to start the process. And there's really three main purposes for that, and that's the transfer of assets to those that are named in your last will and testament as beneficiaries. Also, it gives your creditors the right to file a claim for any debt that is owed to them. And lastly, it gives individuals the opportunity to contest a will if there's a reason for mental incapacity or undue influence, things like that, to make sure that the proper last will and testament has been filed. So obviously the transfer of asset piece of that is a big portion of what a business owner might go through. Also, there are other alternatives that you might have in place or in conjunction with a last will and testament. One of those is a trust. A revocable trust, is typically linked with what we call a pour over will. And that just ensures that any assets that happen to fall outside of your trust, anything that you have not titled in the name of your trust, upon your death would pour over into the trust and pay out and be distributed to beneficiaries according to the terms of the trust. Many of you have heard of the couple of different types of trust that I was going to focus on today: revocable trust and irrevocable. Revocable meaning that you can amend or revoke that trust at any time. Irrevocable means that it's typically in place and only can be changed primarily through the court. There are a few other means to change that, but irrevocable trusts typically come from a last will and testament, or as a result of a revocable trust for beneficiaries in the future. The power of a trust, I think, above a simple last will and testament, is it really is a living, breathing document in life and in death. A lot of our clients or prospective clients think of, I'm fully healthy, I'm managing a business, everything's going just fine, and then potentially and ultimately pass away. There is a lot of gray area, as we all know, in how we manage our businesses and our life accordingly in that gray space. So Carrie is going to talk here in just a few minutes about the importance of choosing the right person or entity to manage that in that gray space. So lots of businesses are owned through LLCs and other various formats. Some of those LLC interests being owned in a trust for management, again, during life, but also if there is incapacity or other issues that allows the trustee and therefore the LLC to continue functioning accordingly. Assets owned by the trust, including business ownerships. Again, Ben mentioned a lot of different formats of ownership, and I think it's very important to have that plan and succession plan is put together by your attorney and legal counsel, hopefully along with trust professionals to work with you to make sure that the proper ownership and the proper succession planning up and including the death of the business owner are in place for the beneficiaries and within your plan. A couple of other key documents in your estate plan is your power of attorney, naming an attorney in fact. Again, that can run in conjunction with a trust or just simply a last will and testament. They may or may not have powers to make decisions according to your business plan. It's something to be very detailed in that durable power of attorney. And then healthcare directives, end-of-life care, HIPAA power of attorney are all important documents to make sure that you have proper direction if you become ill or incapacitated. One final thing before I turn it over to Carrie, I wanted to focus on is estate equalization with businesses. A lot of times you have family members that might take on a role within that business, and therefore if you have multiple siblings involved with that, there may be some that are interested, some that are not interested. Make sure that you understand where they fit in the role of the business and the ownership of that business and the continued function of the business. It's good to revisit that along with any estate plan and any business succession plan, as there are certainly situations that change within that ownership and interest in remaining part of that business. There are certain ways to equalize that. Life insurance products are a good way to equalize from a financial situation. And you might also designate other assets in lieu of ownership to a business within that plan in order to equalize that between family members if they're involved. And children running the business and children continuing with ownership, those are sometimes two different things. And so a lot of times you will have children who are very interested in being very active. And you will also have children that are don't necessarily want to be active day to day, but they want to remain in the ownership of a profitable company. So just some things to keep in mind when making sure you have an equalization of your estate within a business within your estate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Smith, and she's going to touch on some more of the things that I just went over, along with some additions about choosing the right participants.
Thank you, Lee. So you've heard from Ben and you've heard from Lee the value of having a proper business succession plan and having your estate plan in place. And really, I think the question everybody else is, well, what does that mean? How does that really affect me? What happens? I think sometimes the best way to explain it is just to use a real life example. And I'm gonna give you two so you can kind of get thinking. You understand why having a solid estate plan along with a business succession plan is necessary, and who you choose to do what for you is key also. So let's look at Sally, solo practitioner, owns her own business. She doesn't have an estate plan. She doesn't have a business succession plan, but she has a very profitable bakery. I'm just making it up, Sally's Bakery, right? And Sally becomes incapacitated or even dies, what happens to her business then? She doesn't have anything laid out. She doesn't have a power of attorney in place. She doesn't have a trust in place. She doesn't have a business succession plan in place. What happens? Well, legally speaking, if Sally's married, 9 out of 10 times it's going to fall on the spouse to step in and run the business, or to find an employee who can run the business, or worst case scenario, and probably what happens 9 out of 10 times, is Sally's bakery just closes down. What happens if Sally has outstanding orders? What happens if she, her calendar's full? All of those things just go away, and someone has to wrap them up. Someone has to come in and fill the orders. And oftentimes that's left to whoever your significant other is, especially when you don't have a business partner. So having a plan in place, having either a key employee or just a spouse who has knowledge of your day-to-day business. We see that a lot, where Sally may be married, but her husband has no interest in the bakery. This was something she started out doing because she liked to bake, and it turned into, a booming bakery. And he has his own career. He doesn't have any intentions of running a bakery, so the business closes down. Or if he sees the value in it, he may try, but he's not the baker. It all relies on Sally. That's where choosing the right person to step in. Oftentimes you think of your spouse as your power of attorney. In that situation, maybe for your business, you exclude your spouse for doing that, and you choose someone who has an interest in it, who showed an interest, and you start thinking about your estate plan in a different way in light of your business, and that's really important. Now, contrast that Sally with Sally who has all this laid out. She understands her husband's limitations as far as his interest in the business or his own abilities to bake. Maybe he can't bake to save anybody, so she gets a friend who is a baker, maybe her mentor, someone who can step in during that transition period, whether it's to wrap up the business, to fulfill the orders because of her incapacity or death, and someone who can step in and just wind it all up and do it properly so that, her reputation is saved. It's a little easier when you have a co-owner or a key employee, and the plan is pretty clear as to who will be the successor. But you still have to have all of your ducks in a row in that situation too. It may be understood, we hear that a lot. Well, it's understood that so-and-so is going to take over the business. Well, it may be understood, but if you haven't set up the proper documents in place to get it there, it may not actually happen the way that you want. And choosing that key employee, choosing, your co-owners, even in the beginning, before you even talk about business succession or opening a business, that's all very important. How you structure your business succession plan, it has to be agreed on by everybody. And I would always suggest that all of the partners have their own counsel represented, and that everybody thinks through it fully and is on the same page as to what really happens in a time of transition. And doing all of that helps your family who you leave behind, who has to deal with your incapacity or your death, not feel overwhelmed, burdened, stressed out, not able to do what they need to do on a day-to-day to either grieve or manage the household. Because you set someone in place. Sally has set her mentor in place in that example to come in and run the business so that the husband doesn't have to worry about who's going to pay for the flour getting delivered, and what about this wedding cake that's due on Saturday, and all of these other things when he's trying to, decide what's the best course of medical treatment, or how do I plan a funeral, or whatever that is. So this succession plan, a solid plan is necessary, a well thought out from beginning to end plan, and your choice of who you choose to make those decisions, whether for your business or for your home, is also very key. Sally wouldn't want her husband baking the cake and destroying her reputation. So it's important that she think that all the way through. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen Cash, and she's going to talk about retirement plans.
Thanks, Carrie. So as you're getting into business and maybe some of the last things that you're thinking about is what do I need to be putting back for retirement? So for small business owners, sole proprietors, the very first option could be a traditional or Roth IRA. And so this allows you to put money back either pre-tax or after tax. So it is a tax advantage to you, and it will grow tax-free, and you have advantages on the back end when you take the money out on both the tax deferred and the Roth option. So another item for a sole proprietor is a solo 401k plan. This is best for businesses or self-employed with no employees except a spouse. If you're married, your spouse can participate in your solo 401k plan. It does have tax advantages, contributions are tax deductible. As the employee, you can contribute up to $19,500 in 2021. And you can also contribute an additional contribution of up to 25% of your compensation. So this allows you to put that money back and receive that tax advantage that you may need in order to benefit yourself during retirement. So all of these options are going to be very tax advantageous for you as the business owner. So on the next slide, what about if I have no employees or I have a few employees in my business? A SEP IRA. That's a self-employed plan IRA. It's best for self-employed people of small business or small business owners. It does have tax advantages. You can deduct the lesser of your contribution of 25% of net self-employment income. You are limited. The maximum contribution is $58,000. So there is a huge difference in the contribution limits that you can contribute compared to the traditional Roth or traditional IRA or the Roth IRA when it comes to the SEP IRA. Again, this is taking in more of your compensation, and it allows you to put back more money, and it is does have a tax advantage. This is available for a variety of small businesses, sole proprietorships, partnerships, limited liabilities, C Corps and S Corps. So again, it can be utilized for very many different types of businesses. The next option would be a simple IRA, and that is a savings incentive match plan for employees, IRA. Now this is a little bit more intense because it can benefit businesses with up to 100 employees. It can be costly to the employer because you have to guarantee a match contribution to those employees that contribute to the simple IRA plan, or you either have to give a contribution across the board to all of the employees, and that's going to allow you to contribute to the simple IRA. There are also other options that employers can take advantage of. If you have more than 100 employees, then you would want to look at a defined contribution plan, a 401k plan, or a profit sharing plan. Even if you have less than 100 employees, you may want to look at a 401k plan that has a safe harbor provision in it. The safe harbor provision would allow you as a business owner to contribute up to the maximum amount allowed by the IRS, and those amounts can change each year, but it would allow you to put more money into the retirement plan as the business owner. With each of these options, there are some reporting requirements, and as you do grow your business and you change your retirement plan, those reporting options do become more and sometimes can be burdensome. So just make sure that you are aware of all the reporting and the notification items that you will need to do for your employees if you do start a retirement plan of any one of these types. On the next slide, we always like to tell people when you are either buying or selling a business, a lot of times the retirement plan is the last thing that is even thought about. So don't forget about the retirement plan, whether you are buying or selling. There are notification requirements. If the company has established a plan, you must notify the employees and the retirement plan provider of your intention to buy, sell a business. Always keep that on the front burner when you are negotiating, whether it's buying or selling a business. If the plan is a 401k or a profit sharing plan, this does not apply to an IRA, a SEP IRA, a simple IRA. You have to make sure that you're aware of what type of buy sell it is. So if it's a stock asset buy sell, can affect the retirement plan. If it's a stock sale, then the buyer most likely will inherit the retirement plan along with the purchase. They may not want that. So you need to make sure that you make your buyer aware of your retirement plan up front. If only certain assets are sold, then your company still exists and can continue to sponsor the retirement plan. That may not be your intention. You may have wanted to eliminate the retirement plan at the sale of the assets. So make sure that you always keep your retirement plan up front and foremost in your thoughts when you're looking at buying or selling a business. There are specific steps you must follow to terminate your retirement plan. And it also does get reported if you do have a true 401k defined contribution plan. There are annual reporting requirements. 5500s have to be filed, and that's with the Department of Labor. And so once you terminate your retirement plan, there is a final 5500 that has to be filed once the assets are all distributed. Another thing to keep in mind is as you grow your business, once you exceed over 100 employees, there's a possibility that you're going to require an audit by an outside CPA firm. So keep that in mind as you grow your business, that you may be looking at an audit on your retirement plan. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to present today to the Venture Center, and I'll be now turning it back over to Lee Rush.
Thank you, Karen. Ashley, that concludes our presentation materials, and but we're happy to take any questions, comments if you have time.
Absolutely, we do have time. So this is where we turn it over to our attendees via Zoom and on Facebook. If you have a question for these four panelists and would like to have it answered, feel free to chat. You can also raise your hand and we'll unmute you if you have a longer question you don't want to type out, or you can use the Q&A feature. So we'll open up to our attendees now if you've got a question you would like to have answered. To kick things off there, we do have a couple of questions that have come through. When is a good time to create this succession or estate plan? Is it right after you start the business? Is it right before? Timing of when to consider these things.
Very good question, Carrie. Ben, any thoughts from you guys on that?
I would say, y'all can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would say the best time for an estate plan is as soon as you have $1 and property in your own name. But as far as business succession, it's really, there isn't a mathematical formula that makes it great, but you know, at the point in time when your business is something, you know, if you're just getting started, it's probably not necessary to have, if you've been working at this for years, you've been growing steady, and now you're in full force, that's probably the time you really need to start looking at how your estate plan and your business succession plan goes, especially if you're booked, you know, a month, 2 months, 3 months out. You definitely need a plan in place there. If you're hitting the ground running today and you don't have any jobs, any prospects, it's not as important to spend the money to go talk to an attorney to get a succession plan in place.
That's a good piece of advice, because I know there's probably several people in attendance that may or may not have considered this and, you know, put it off, and it's definitely something to keep top of mind before you actually need it and find yourself in some trouble. So that's a good point. And then a question came through about the traditional versus Roth IRA. Is there a simple rule of thumb to deciding which one to go with, or they would imagine it's a little bit more complicated than that?
So yes, so the traditional IRA, the contributions are tax deductible upfront. So you're going to put the money in tax-free, you get that tax advantage, and then it's going to grow tax-free. And the belief is that once you reach retirement age, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket and you take the money out then. But on the Roth, you're going to put that money in after tax, so you've already paid the tax on it. It's going to grow tax-free. Once you take the distribution out after reaching retirement age, it is no taxes due. So you get the advantage of letting it grow tax-free and then not owing any tax on the earnings that account made.
I would like to add to that if I can too on the Roth and the IRA. It really becomes a math solution for you and your CPA. If you're just getting started and you're in a lower income tax bracket, there's advantages to go ahead and paying the tax on it and putting it into a Roth, so that in the end, but if you're in a larger business, you've been working for a while, the traditional may be, because of your tax bracket, the better route to go. So that's where having a good CPA definitely comes in handy, so that you can, just do the math and what is the best tax advantage to you now and what helps you more in the future. But I would think having a bucket of each is a good way to go.
And additionally, for that Roth IRA traditional piece, if you assumed you were going to be in a higher tax bracket and got the Roth IRA, and you get to the point where it's time to cash in and you're actually in a lower bracket, is there a penalty associated with that?
Now, the only time, not that I'm aware of, again, as Carrie said, a good CPA would be able to direct you on that. But what I do understand is that with the Roth, you have to meet the criteria of the Roth in order to be able to draw it out without having any taxes or penalties due on your earnings. So, but I don't think that there's any tax advantage depending on, if you're in a lower tax bracket on that Roth. It would be on the traditional IRA, because if you're putting the money back when you're in a higher tax bracket and then you take it out, the thinking is you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, you're retired, you don't have a steady income coming in from the business, and so you are going to be in the lower tax bracket.
Yeah, unfortunately, the government doesn't give you back your contributions at a higher tax rate if you're taking it out lower. It's just a gamble you kind of take.
Bummer.
Yeah, I know, right?
And there is another thing you have to look at too, I believe, on both IRAs, on the traditional IRA and the Roth, you have to watch for your adjusted gross income limits, because there are some things that if you make over a certain amount adjusted in your adjusted gross income, you don't get to take the tax deduction at all. So you have to be careful of that, or you may not be able to contribute. And that's taking into consideration how you're filing your taxes, whether it's you're filing jointly with your spouse, but it's that does come into play.
Great questions. Keep them coming. Any other questions from our attendees? Again, you can use the chat feature, raise your hand, or use the Q&A function. I should have created a poll to see how many people have created a business succession plan and an estate plan. Maybe anyone that has, does anybody want to give a testimony on why it was important, or talk about the importance of that firsthand experience?
One thing we didn't say, Ashley, that I would like to point out too, is that once you create your business succession plan and your estate plan, it's not like you create it and you hide it away and you never think about it again. As your business grows, as your family changes, as life events occur, you're going to want to take those documents out every 3 to 5 years and just verify that the plan is still the plan and it doesn't need to change.
Thanks for answering that, Carrie. That was actually a question that just came up. How often, once you've established those, how often should they check that? So that's thanks for answering that.
Ashley, any other questions for our team?
Nothing has come in the last, since that last question. If someone is inspired and really has, figured that they do need to get on the books and make sure they have their succession plan and their estate plan, and even maybe establish that 401k, can you talk us through that process on working with your team?
Karen, you want to talk about from the retirement plan side?
Sure. So for a small business, whether you want to start any types of the plans that we have mentioned, all you have to do is call Simmons Trust. I actually manage the retirement plan area. We'll be glad to help you and walk you through each of the options. As far as a 401k plan or a profit sharing plan, what we do is we sit down with that business owner and we have a retirement plan checklist, and we go over all the questions to see exactly what type of plan that individual is wanting. Is it going to be to mostly benefit him with a little benefit to the employees? Does he want to share the profit across the board to all the employees? But again, we have a retirement plan checklist, and we sit down with that business owner and we go over those questions, and then we fit that plan to that business owner's needs. So it can be customized depending on what they want. But we'll be happy to visit with anyone.
Thank you, Karen. And I'll just say, from working with Karen on the retirement plan services side and working with Carrie and Ben on really our personal trust side, we are very proud of our team approach. So we work together as a team internally. We have 11 portfolio managers that help us with investments on the personal trust and estate side. We have trust officers and trust assistants who help round out that team. But we're also team with your current professionals that you work with. Carrie and Ben both have mentioned our abilities and our desire to work with your CPA, your attorney, and making sure you have a solid plan in place. Carrie and Ben bring many years of administration, been involved in business succession plans. They have helped kind of continue running and make sure that a business is transitioned to its new owner or closed down if that's the desire of the business owner. So anybody that is listening to us on the presentation today, they are more than welcome to contact me, or they can contact Ben or Carrie if they would like to discuss further working with us. And again, they're outside professionals to make sure that that business plan is in place. And as Carrie mentioned too, it really does run in very tight conjunction with your estate plan overall. So I think that's a very important part to kind of look at those together and have teammates that understand where that's going now and in the future, and can help you evaluate that as time goes by.
Fantastic. That was a great presentation with lots of information. And to all of our attendees, if this is something that you need to prepare for, if you find yourself as a business owner and looking at these options, this is a fantastic team to work with. And I'm glad you got to have your questions answered and listen to the sage advice of these four. If you're interested, like I said, reach out to Simmons Wealth Management team, Ben Ridings, Carrie Smith, Lee Rush, or Karen Cash. They will be more than happy to help you. With that being said, we want to conclude today's presentation. So thank you so much to our four panelists for this topic and answering the questions. Also want to give a big thank you to our sponsors, Frost PLLC, Simmons Bank, Wright Lindsay Jennings, the Little Rock Regional Chamber, and Mainstream Technology. We hope you'll attend one of our future programs that we have. But in the meantime, hope you have a fantastic Tuesday, and we will see you again soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Woo!